Yes!
Gambit. Yep, this is probably the most hated and most ridiculed game type to ever be introduced in a Destiny franchise. Every time I hear something about Gambit, it's always something negative, and in Beyond Light, it looks like Bungie made a bunch of changes in an attempt to make this game type more desirable. Despite all of this, Gambit does have a following, believe it or not, and or people heavily affine to playing it, which is why I took it upon myself to share all of the information that I've gathered in regards to what was changed since Beyond Light was released. Now before I get into things, I suggest watching a video I uploaded titled What is Gambit Beyond Light Edition for those of you who aren't familiar with what Gambit is. So yeah, let's go ahead and get it in. First things first, you'll notice that when you click on the Gambit icon on the director, the space here is very barren. The area that used to have icons for Gambit, Gambit Prime, The Reckoning, and Gambit Private matches has been reduced to just Gambit and Gambit Private matches. The Reckoning has been completely removed from the game, and certain elements from Gambit Prime have been retained in the current Gambit that we have. Okay, so for the most part, everything will feel the same because Beyond Light's version of Gambit doesn't differ that much from what we've seen in the past. In the OG Gambit, you would have to bank 75 motes to summon a Primeval, and each match was the best 2 out of 3. Or, if both teams won 1 round each, a victory was decided by a tiebreaker round. But in Beyond Light, a match of Gambit consists of a single round. It takes 100 motes to summon a Primeval, and you can drain motes from the enemy side. All of these elements were borrowed from Gambit Prime. For those of you that played Gambit in its most new and most original form back in the Forsaken era, you'll probably recall the medium blocker back then was the Taken Phalanx. Well, the Taken Phalanx has reprised its role as the medium blocker again, and has replaced the Taken Captain that's been around for the past several seasons. And due to the fact that Gambit Prime is no more, the Gambit Prime armor has been sunset, and the perks have 0 effect here. This means that your enhanced Invader Shield, the ability to mark invaders and summon large blockers, for example, are no longer possible. Also, another thing that I noticed is that the Primeval Envoys will continually spawn, and killing them will still grant stacks of Primeval Slayer up to 10. Now from what I recall, in pre-Beyond Light Gambit, only 2 Primevals will spawn, and the Primeval Slayer stacks will passively increase over time. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I don't recall Primeval spawning again after the first 2 were defeated. But that was in pre-Beyond Light Gambit, just so you know. You may be asking why Bungie decided to make these moves. Well, as I stated previously, Gambit has had a pretty bad reputation since it was first introduced. I mean, there are people who enjoy playing it, but when you compare Gambit to PvE and PvP, it's not only the least played of the 3, but it's also very one-dimensional. The Crucible consists of core player versus player modes, such as Clash and Control, which are meant to be engaging to players of all skill sets. Trials of Osiris, Iron Banner, and 3v3 Survival will be more like the endgame modes of PvP. PvE consists of strikes, raids, story missions, and basically anything that involves you strictly fighting the AI. Now before Beyond Light came out, regular Gambit, Gambit Prime, and The Reckoning all fell beneath the Gambit category. But now that Gambit Prime and The Reckoning no longer exists, we're down to one single Gambit mode, and if this happened to any other game mode, the player base would be up in arms, but I honestly don't think that anybody has a problem with this happening to Gambit. The Reckoning's only purpose was to reward you with Gambit Prime armor and weapons. The armor was super easy to get and could be farmed easily and had a ton of intentionality. You had a lot of control over what you wanted to get. However, the same couldn't be said about the weapons because they relied on whichever one of the 2 bosses was present for that particular week, meaning that the bosses would rotate every reset day. Even though Bungie eventually buffed the drop rates of the Gambit Prime weapons in The Reckoning, they were still annoying to farm and pretty unfun if you ask me. The Reckoning never introduced its own bounties or anything that would make obtaining these weapons easier, and if Bungie would have removed the acquisition of Gambit Prime armor and weapons from The Reckoning, there would have been absolutely no reason to play it. Gambit Prime was meant to be the more, air quotes, competitive version of Gambit, but it failed miserably. Season 6, also known as Season of the Drifter, was based entirely on Gambit Prime, and this did not sit well with the majority of the Destiny community at all. At this point in time, Gambit was 2 seasons old, and by this time, everybody had pretty much made their minds up that they hated it, and Bungie was struggling to make it appealing to the player base, so making an entire season revolve around it was their last-ditch effort. And if you weren't around to witness this, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that this failed horribly. As a matter of fact, Season 6 was the only season from the Year 2 annual pass that didn't introduce a raid or anything meaningful to the endgame, so if you weren't playing Gambit Prime, you just weren't getting your money's worth that season. And honestly, I would never suggest doing something that you get 0 enjoyment out of solely due to the fact that you spent money on it. So for those of you that completely skipped out on Season 6, I completely understand where you're coming from. So yeah, that pretty much sums up why Bungie decided to retain some of the attributes from Gambit Prime in this new version of Gambit. Playing 2 rounds or 3 rounds if you end up going to the tiebreaker round made matches of Gambit last seemingly forever. And this was more apparent to those who didn't enjoy Gambit at all. Gambit has been clinging on for dear life since its inception, and Bungie is doing everything in their power to make this game mode as appealing as possible, without forcing it down the player base's Face's throat like they did with Season 6. So this is probably the last big update that Gambit will receive, maybe for a long time or forever for that matter. But yeah, that does it for this one, everybody. I hope that you found this video helpful. I know that a decent amount of y'all are fans of Gambit and you probably play it daily, so tell me how you feel about Gambit in the comment section. If you made it to the end of this video and you found it to be useful, do me a favor and thumb rush to that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.